You ever lie awake at 3 in the morning doing that fun thing where you calculate how many years you have left to work and then try to figure out if you'll ever actually be able to retire? Yeah, me too. And here's what makes it even better. You're probably comparing yourself to some number you heard somewhere about what the average person retires with, and that number is making you feel either way too confident or absolutely terrified. Here's the thing though, that number everyone throws around, it's basically a mathematical lie. And I'm going to tell you what it actually is. But not yet, because first you need to understand why knowing that number without context is about as useful as knowing the average person has slightly less than 2 arms. Technically accurate, completely meaningless for your actual life. What I am going to do is walk you through the actual retirement landscape, the real numbers that matter, and why most of what you think you know about retirement savings is designed to either sell you something or make you panic. Spoiler alert, it's usually both. So let's start with what you've probably been told retirement should look like. You're 65, you've got this nice nest egg saved up, you're traveling, playing golf, spending time with grandkids, living that AARP magazine cover life. The financial advisors love to tell you that you need about 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle. They'll show you these calculators that spit out massive numbers like $1.5 million or $2 million, and suddenly you're having a panic attack in your cubicle. But here's where it gets interesting. When researchers actually study what Americans have saved for retirement, the numbers are all over the place. And I mean wildly, hilariously, depressingly, all over the place. We've got people retiring with 8-figure portfolios, and we've got people retiring with basically whatever change they found in their couch cushions. The problem is that when you mix those two groups together and calculate an average, you get a number that represents basically nobody's actual experience. It's like, if I told you the average person in a room with 9 broke college students and Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. Congratulations, you're all rich now. Except you're not, you're still eating ramen. This is why the financial media loves to throw around these average numbers. They're dramatic, they're scary, and they make you click on articles with headlines like, "Are you behind on retirement savings?" Yes, Karen, everyone is behind compared to the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Thanks for asking. But what actually matters isn't the average. What matters is the median, which is the middle point where half of people have more and half have less. And the median is where things get really spicy, because it reveals what's actually happening in normal people's lives, not what's happening in the lives of people who got lucky with stock, options, or inherited a fortune. Here's the brutal truth about retirement savings in America. Most people are winging it. They're contributing some random percentage to their 401k that seemed reasonable when they started their job 7 years ago. They picked some target date fund because it had their retirement year in the name, and that seemed smart. They're vaguely aware they should probably be doing more, but between student loans and rent and trying to have an actual life, retirement feels like this abstract future problem they'll deal with later. And you know what? That's not actually crazy. Because the system we have now, where every individual worker is supposed to become their own personal pension fund manager while also working full-time and raising kids and dealing with life, is genuinely insane. Your grandparents didn't have to figure this out. They showed up to work, did their job, and their employer handled retirement. It was called a pension, and it was great, except companies realized they could save money by making it your problem instead. So now we're all out here trying to decode terms like expense ratios and asset allocation and Roth conversions, and most of us are doing it wrong because nobody actually taught us this stuff. They taught us the Pythagorean theorem, which I've used exactly 0 times since high school, but compound interest and tax-advantaged investing? Nah, figure that out yourself, champ. All right, so let's get into the nerdy math stuff for a second, because understanding the difference between median and mean is literally the key to not feeling like a complete failure about your retirement savings. The mean, which is what most people call the average, is when you add up all the numbers and divide by how many numbers you have. Simple, right? Except when it comes to money, the mean is basically useless because wealth distribution in America looks like a hockey stick. You've got this long flat part where most people are, and then this sharp vertical spike where the ultra-wealthy live. So when someone tells you the average American has X amount saved for retirement, what they're really telling you is that a small number of extremely wealthy people are dragging that number way up, making everyone else look broke by comparison. Which, to be fair, most people are broke by comparison to millionaires. but that's not exactly a useful benchmark for your life. The median, on the other hand, is the middle number. Line everyone up from poorest to richest, find the person standing exactly in the middle, and boom, that's your median. This number actually tells you what a typical person's experience looks like, not what happens when you average in a bunch of tech executives with seven-figure portfolios. And here's where it gets even more interesting. These numbers change dramatically based on age, which makes sense because a 25-year-old and a 60-year-old should not have the same amount saved. If they do, either the 25-year-old is killing it or the 60-year-old is in serious trouble. For people in their 20s, the median retirement savings is basically zero. And before you freak out, that's actually somewhat normal, because most people in their 20s are dealing with entry-level salaries, student loans, and trying to figure out how to be an adult. If you're 27 and you have literally anything saved for retirement, you're already ahead of most of your peers. People in their 30s start to see that number creep up a bit. The median for this age group sits somewhere around $12,000, which sounds low until you remember that people in their 30s are often dealing with buying houses, having kids, and all the expensive life stuff that makes saving hard. If you're 35 with $20,000 saved, you're actually doing better than half the people your age. The 40s are where things start to get real. This is when people usually have their highest earning years, and the median retirement savings jumps to around $60,000. Still not enough to actually retire on, but it's progress. If you're in your 40s and you're sitting on six figures in retirement accounts, you're genuinely doing well compared to most Americans. Then we hit the 50s and 60s, which is when people start to panic, because retirement is no longer this abstract future thing. It's that thing happening in like 10 years. The median for people in their early 60s, right before retirement age, is around $134,000. And yes, that's the age group closest to retirement. That number should probably be higher. Way higher. Now, let's talk about where people actually keep their retirement money, because understanding these accounts is like understanding the difference between a checking account and a savings account, except way more complicated and with way more acronyms. The 401k is the big one. This is the account your employer offers where you contribute money from your paycheck before taxes get taken out. The beautiful part is that many employers will match your contributions up to a certain percentage. This is literally free money. If your company matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary and you're not contributing at least 6%, you're basically telling your boss, hey, thanks for offering me a raise, but I'm going to pass. Don't be that person. But here's what's actually happening with 401k accounts in America. The average balance across all ages is around $103,000. But remember what we just learned about averages being useless? The median 401k balance is closer to $27,000. That's the typical experience, not six figures, not even close. And it gets better. About 1/3 of American workers who have access to a 401k don't contribute anything to it. $0. They're leaving free money on the table because either they don't understand how it works, they think they can't afford it, or they're planning to start next year, which somehow never comes. For people who do contribute, the average amount is about 7% of their salary. Financial experts recommend 15%. So even the people who are saving about half of what they should be saving. It's like being told you need to drink 8 glasses of water a day and deciding 4 is probably fine. Technically better than nothing, definitely not optimal. Then we've got IRAs, which stands for Individual Retirement Account. These are accounts you set up yourself, not through your employer. You can contribute up to $7,000 per year if you're under 50, and the money grows either tax-deferred in a traditional IRA or completely tax-free in a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is honestly one of the best financial tools ever created for normal people, and almost nobody uses it properly. You contribute money after taxes, it grows tax-free forever, and you can withdraw it tax-free in retirement. If you're young and in a lower tax bracket now than you'll be later, this is basically a cheat code for retirement savings. But the average Roth IRA balance is only around $39,000, and most people contribute way less than the maximum allowed. Traditional IRAs have an average balance of around $60,000, but again, median numbers tell a different story. Most people with IRAs have way less than that because a small number of people with massive balances drag the average up. The really depressing part? Only about 1/3 of American households even have an IRA at all. Most people either don't know they exist, think they're too complicated to set up, or genuinely can't afford to contribute after maxing out their 401k, which, let's be honest, most people aren't maxing out their 401k either. All right, so we've established that most people have basically nothing saved for retirement, and the accounts that exist are underfunded. But don't worry, we've got Social Security, right? That government safety net that's definitely not going to collapse before you retire? Yeah, let's talk about that. Social Security was never designed to be your entire retirement income. It was supposed to be one leg of a three-legged stool, along with pensions and personal savings. Except we already killed pensions, and we've established that personal savings are a disaster, so now Social Security is basically a one-legged stool, which is just a stick, and you're trying to sit on it. The average Social Security benefit right now is about $1,780 per month. That's $21,360 per year. Now, if you're thinking that sounds like a decent chunk of change, let me remind you that the poverty line for a single person is around $14,000 per year. So, Social Security gets you above poverty. Congratulations, you can afford to be slightly less poor. But here's where it gets fun. That $1,780 average assumes you worked consistently for 35 years and earned average wages. If you took time off to raise kids, if you worked part-time, if you had periods of unemployment, if you earned less than average, your benefit will be lower. Some people get as little as $800 per month. Try living on that in any major city. I'll wait. And the maximum Social Security benefit, which you only get if you earned the maximum taxable income for 35 years, is about $3,822 per month. That's $45,864 per year, which sounds way better until you realize that if you were earning maximum taxable income your whole career, you were probably making over $160,000 per year in your final working years. Going from $160,000 to $45,000 is going to require some lifestyle adjustments. Here's the part that really keeps people up at night. Social Security is projected to run out of its trust fund reserves by 2034. That's only 11 years away. When that happens, the system will only be able to pay out about 78% of scheduled benefits, unless Congress does something to fix it. So that $1,780 monthly check becomes $1,388. Good luck stretching that. Now, will Congress actually let Social Security collapse? Probably not, because old people vote and politicians like being elected. But the fixes are going to involve some combination of raising the retirement age, increasing payroll taxes, or reducing benefits. None of those options are fun, and all of them mean you're probably getting less than you're counting on. The bottom line is this: if your retirement plan is just Social Security, your retirement plan is poverty with extra steps. You need actual savings to supplement it, which brings us back to the problem we started with. All right, so here's where I'm finally going to tell you the number everyone's been waiting for. The average American retires with about $170,000 in retirement savings. There it is. The big reveal. And your first reaction is probably either, oh, that's not so bad, or, oh, no, that's terrible, depending on where you're at in your own journey. But here's the thing that makes this number even more complicated and honestly kind of hilarious in a dark way. That $170,000, that's just retirement accounts. That's not total net worth, and it's definitely not liquid assets you can actually use. Net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. So if you've got $170,000 in retirement accounts, but you also own a house worth $400,000 with a $200,000 mortgage, your net worth is $370,000. Sounds pretty good, right? Except you can't eat your house. You can't pay for groceries with equity. Unless you sell it or take out a reverse mortgage, that money is just sitting there being theoretical. This is why the retirement savings number and the net worth number tell completely different stories. The average net worth for Americans approaching retirement is around $1 million. Wow, everyone's a millionaire. Crisis solved. Let's go home. Except most of that $1 million is tied up in home equity that people can't or won't access. They're house rich and cash poor, which is a fancy way of saying they own a valuable asset they can't actually spend. And then we've got the debt factor, which is where things get really spicy. The average person approaching retirement has about $96,000 in debt. credit cards, car loans, medical bills, and, oh yeah, increasingly, student loans. That's right, people are retiring with student loan debt now, either their own or because they co-signed for their kids. Nothing says golden years like making loan payments on a degree you got in 1987. So let's do the actual math here. 170,000 in retirement savings minus 96,000 in debt gives you $74,000 in actual liquid net worth. That's what you really have to work with, not 170,000. Not $1 million in net worth, 74,000 actual dollars that aren't tied up in your house or offset by debt. And remember, that's the average, which we've already established is inflated by wealthy people. The median liquid retirement assets after accounting for debt is closer to $12,000. $12,000. That's enough to live for maybe a year if you're extremely frugal and nothing goes wrong. Which, spoiler alert, things always go wrong when you're retired, because that's when your body decides to start falling apart and medical bills show up like they're collecting a debt you didn't know you owed. Here's what makes this even more fun. A lot of people approaching retirement are still paying mortgages. The dream used to be that you'd have your house paid off by retirement, but with people buying homes later in life and refinancing to pull out equity, about 40% of retirees still have mortgage payments. So you're trying to live on Social Security and $74,000 in savings while also paying a mortgage. The math doesn't math. This is why understanding the difference between net worth and liquid assets matters so much. You can look wealthy on paper while being functionally broke in terms of actual spending power. It's like being told you're a millionaire because you own a Picasso, but you can't sell it and you still need to buy groceries. Cool painting. Still hungry. Look, I know this has been a lot of depressing numbers and reality checks about how most people are way behind on retirement savings. But here's the thing. Knowing where you actually stand versus where you think you stand is the first step to fixing it. If you're in your 20s or 30s and you have anything saved, you're already ahead of most people your age. If you're in your 40s or 50s and you're panicking, you still have time to make serious progress if you start now. The key is to stop comparing yourself to inflated averages and start taking actual action. Max out your employer match first. That's free money you're leaving on the table. Then open a Roth IRA and automate contributions, even if it's just $50 a month. Increase your savings rate by 1% every 6 months until you hit 15% of your income. Pay down high-interest debt aggressively because that's a guaranteed return. And most importantly, start today. Not next month, not next year, today. Because every day you wait costs you compound interest you'll never get back. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if this video helped clarify where you actually stand and what you can do about it. The choice is yours.